Hey guys, so sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I just wake up with these ideas in my head, and sometimes I want to share them. But yeah, uh, that's why I'm making this video. 'Cause I feel like I should talk about this. So not too long ago, I woke up with like this idea that eons ago there really was a cataclysm. Like, you could think of it as humanity's first reset, or whatever name you want to call it. And I'm not saying it's it's an original idea that I came up with or anything, but it was more so like an understanding of how it affected the people left behind after the cataclysm. That's kind of what I woke up with. And we can speculate all day about the cause of this cataclysm, but that's a whole nother video. But anyways, I feel like it wasn't just a physical disaster. Like, it affected the collective consciousness in a spiritual way. It was a fall in consciousness, in addition to like the actual physical cataclysm. Basically, it was the fall, and it was so traumatic that we lost all memory of who or what we are. We lost like 90% of our mental functioning, including psychic abilities. Um, all the capabilities we think of as being supernatural today were actually just a part of our normal way of being before this first fall. In a way, you could say it made us handicapped. Um, I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I mean. Right after the cataclysm, I don't think we could even communicate with each other. And when I say communicate, I'm not talking about the way we communicate today. Words are what had to be developed after the fact. Our original form of communication was telepathy, through like images and emotions, not necessarily telepathy through human words. Like, not, it wasn't necessarily telepathy that involved human words, but all of that was lost due to the trauma caused by the cataclysm. Like, right afterwards, our mind was wiped clean. So there was no conscious memory of what it just even happened. It all got buried in our subconscious, but we got cut off from that part of ourselves, because that's how trauma gets dealt with a lot of times. It gets buried and forgotten, and sometimes people start to remember if they're lucky, like later in life, but that's not always the case. Um, and after the fall, all we knew on a conscious level was that something was off, like something was just felt very wrong. And a lot of us still feel this today in this current reincarnation. We feel like this world just isn't right, or like we don't fit in, we never fit in. Um, Often the events involving cataclysms, or the series of cataclysms, because there was more than one. These things come and go in cycles. Often this fall gets depicted in movies and different stories because it's buried in our subconscious. Granted, it comes out, in the form of archetypes, but it's there. It's all telling the same story, but just through different metaphors. Um, Countless songs hold this knowledge too. But anyways, when the cataclysm first happened, we had to figure out a way to communicate and survive. So we slowly developed spoken language from scratch. So the ability to talk, that was a blessing, even though it didn't compare to telepathy. It was something. But there was always a glitch at the root of it, though. Every time this cataclysm would cycle back around and we'd have to learn how to talk again, the language itself was always rebuilt on a flawed foundation, because it was developed at a time when our consciousness had basically been split in half. Um, Human language and all the concepts that were and still are conveyed through it are based on duality. Like, it was and still is a reflection of the duality that exists within ourselves that we unknowingly projected onto what we call a world. And I say world, but really there's no subject and object. The whole subject object thing is it's the only way we can talk with our current language. We have to have a subject and an object, two things split in half to talk. And that's how we speak today, because that's how we see the world from our fallen state. We wouldn't even know how to speak out loud in a non-dualistic way. I don't even know if it would be possible, really, not out loud. And now it's just kind of turned into a form of hypnosis. Basically, our human language was developed not only as a means of survival, but I think it was developed as a means of comfort. When our memory and natural psychic abilities were taken away, it was probably very disorientating and scary, and we had to do something to try to get rid of all the confusion. So we developed language, and we used the language to construct an explanation for who we were, because we had no memory of who we were or what had even happened to us. And these stories we came up with back then and even today, these stories are what we tell ourselves to convince ourselves that we know exactly what we are, but it's all just a means to comfort the mind that's been split in half between the conscious and the subconscious. It doesn't matter if we say, well, you know, these stories today are based on scientific findings, or what I know is based on this really old book. It's just, at the end of the day, it's all still just a story. And, you know, don't get me wrong, our creation myths and some of the stuff in the Bible can actually be very helpful for some people, but in a lot of ways, I don't think we're any different from cavemen sitting around the fire making noises, which we call words today, to come up with explanations to try to explain what this is. But whatever this is can never be fully defined. Basically, I think the development of human language solidified the ego as being real to us, or maybe it was the other way around. Maybe the fall created the ego, and then the ego developed our language. I don't know. I'm thinking after the cataclysm, the ego developed as a means to help us survive, and one of the things it created over time was language based in duality. And so now in our present day, we're all so mixed up with ego and all the different concepts it clings to, that we fully identify as being the ego, which is an illusionary self. Like, it created this feedback loop where all our dualistic ideas about reality feeds into the ego and validates it as being real to us. And then the ego, or this false self, is the lens that we perceive the world through. But really, there is no world somewhere out there. There's no world somewhere way out there that exists independent of consciousness, whether we're talking about the collective consciousness or like individual consciousness. What I'm getting at is the same kind of stories our mind-wiped ancestors told themselves as a means of comfort, to convince themselves they could know what life is. We continue to tell these stories to ourselves today. In fact, I think we're, myself included, I think we're addicted to thinking we know. We're addicted to all the finite labels we like to place on the boundless. We want to label source, and we want to label ourselves with concepts, because to the ego there's comfort in knowing. You know what I'm saying is true. There's comfort in thinking like, okay, I've got this all figured out. There's comfort in knowing, but this will never be known. Whatever this is will never be, could never be defined. But that's where the freedom is. The quote unquote knowing can only be found in experiencing right here, right now. And this experiencing that's happening right now is more than enough to know that source is real. It was, it was never meant to be fully explained with any words or concepts. All that does is just split things apart and hypnotize us into identifying with all those words and ideas. But it can only be experienced, not known, not defined by human words. But I don't know. I feel like there comes a point where we have to learn to be comfortable with not knowing. God or source is unknowable. And I use the word God and source interchangeably in these videos, but I don't mean God can't be experienced. I mean what God is, what this is, it can't be contained by our limited dualistic language. Source can never be known through the filter of duality that is our minds. There are no words or concepts that could ever come close to defining God. The words God and source actually aren't accurate at all, but I have to make some kind of sound with my mouth to try to point to the absolute, right? Before the fall, we didn't need dualistic thinking to try to point to source. It was just common knowledge that source is being experienced right now, just like your awareness is being experienced right now. Like, that's the one thing we were and still are 100% sure of. So when I say source is unknowable, I mean it's infinite, it's limitless. So the moment we try to attach a label or concept to source, that's actually putting a limit on defining what God is. That's why non-duality, we say we can never say what source or God is. We can only say what God isn't. We can't even say that source is all-encompassing oneness, because I mean, in a way we could say it's all-encompassing oneness, but at the same time the concept of one automatically implies that there could be a two, and there could never be two because there's only God. There's nothing but the infinite. And the moment we say something could exist that could somehow be separate from the infinite, that makes the infinite finite, if that makes sense, because you've just created a second, and there is no second to God. Like, I don't know. It's hard to put into words, but so we can't say that the infinite is oneness. We can say it's not two. Source goes by no single name, but all that is named is that. Anyways, earlier I said we had to be comfortable with not knowing and not clinging to concepts because our human concepts are rooted into duality. That's just the way our mind formed when we tried to pick up the pieces after the cataclysm. And yes, you could say what I'm saying now is a story or concept, and it is. But like I said, we aren't fully telepathic anymore, so I have to find a way to point to this through words, even though source is beyond words. And you know, I feel like spoken words can be helpful too in a way, but only when we realize that it's all just a metaphor for that which is beyond words. That's why I feel like music is such a good tool to help us remember what already is. Like, there's so many songs where the lines between subject and object get blurred because the reality is there is no subject object. There's not two. All the different pronouns in music are talking about the absolute. It's like some of these songs are telling the story of an inner dialogue between the absolute and its illusionary false ego, or what we call humans today. But I promise you, none of these songs are about human romantic relationships. They're all about the original love affair with Source, and they're there to try to help us remember the way it used to be before the fall. Like, try to listen to the lyrics from the perspective of the subconscious mind, and your mind will be blown. It's ancient and it remembers everything. It remembers exactly what happened eons ago. So you guys know the drill. Go ahead and take a deep breath and use these next few minutes to just take in the music and be present. Let the so-called human artist disappear and let the song be what it really is, which is an attempt from the subconscious to try to wake us from our sleep, from the hypnosis of believing that we're separate from God. It's just a belief. It's just a false belief. So just take a break from all the distractions and all the thinking and really focus on that unconditional love. I call it the God ocean sometimes because it's everywhere. But just, we have to, it's everywhere, but at the same time, we have to open up our eyes and see what's already right in front of us. And see that it's always trying to get our attention. So take this time to focus on that infinite love as you're listening to the entire song for both songs, and really ask yourself, God, if you could send me a message or a sign through this song, what would you want to tell me about?
Somewhere there's speaking, it's already coming in. Oh, and it's rising at the back of your mind. You never could get it unless you were fed it. And now you're here and you don't know why. But under skin knees and the skid marks past the places where you used to learn. You howl and listen and wait for the echoes of angels that won't return. He's everything you want, he's everything you need, he's everything inside of you that you wish you could be. He says all the right things at exactly the right time, but say he's everything you want, he's everything you need, he's everything inside of you that you wish you could be. He says all the right things at exactly the right time, but he means nothing to you when you don't know why. But you'll just sit tight and watch it unwind. It's only what you're asking for, and you'll be just fine with all of your time. It's only what you're waiting for. Out of the island, into the highway, past the places where you might have turned. You never did notice, but you still hide away the anger of angels who won't return. He's everything you want, he's everything you need, he's everything inside of you that you wish you could be. He says all the right things at exactly the right time, but he means nothing to you when you don't know why. I am everything you want, I am everything you need, I am everything inside of you that you wish you could be. I say all the right things at exactly the right time, but I mean nothing to you and I don't know why. And I don't know why. Don't know.
Turn it inside out so I can see the part of you that's drifting over me. And when I wake, you're never there. And when I sleep, you're everywhere. You're everywhere. Just tell me how I got this far. Tell me why you're here and who you are. 'Cause every time I look, you're never there. And every time I sleep, you're always there. 'Cause you're everywhere to me. And when I close my eyes, it's you I see. You're everything I know that makes me believe I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I recognize the way you make me feel. It's hard to think that you might not be real. I sense it now, the water's getting deep. I try to wipe the pain away from me, away from me. 'Cause you're everywhere to me. And when I close my eyes, it's you I see. You're everything I know that makes me believe I'm not alone. I'm not alone. When I touch your hand, it's that I understand the beauty that's within. It's now that we begin. You always light my way. I hope there never comes a day, no matter where I go, I always feel you so. 'Cause you're everywhere to see? So tell me, do you see me?